Hi everyone, my name is Evan Doyle. I'm the Vice President of Technology Strategy at Smarsh. I'm joined on stage by Blake Sherwood, who's our Senior Director of Technical Product Management. We're here to talk to you today about how we reimagined our product culture within our platform engineering organization through a large-scale migration that allowed us to scale to meet our customers' needs on AWS. So we're going to talk about who we are as Smarsh, where we are, what does that architecture migration look like. We're going to talk about how we balanced scaling and resiliency through the creation of observability. We're going to talk about how that created a sense of enablement within our product teams. What benefits did this bring to our customers, and what does the future look like for Smarsh? So Smarsh is a leader in the intelligence communications capture, archive, and surveillance market. And our platform helps all types of organizations remain compliant in a rapidly changing space. With over 1,000 employees, more than 500 of those within our engineering team, we've been helping our customers since 2001 remain compliant. And over the past 23 years, our number of customers have grown to over 6,500, and we manage over 70 petabytes of data for those customers. And we manage billions of communications on a daily basis. So why do our customers need us, right? So unfortunately, all of the communications technologies within a financial institution or within any type of industry are very complex. You have lots of different things like Slack and Teams and Zoom and email and different types of chats. And managing the compliance of these various technologies over time becomes very difficult and complicated. So the Smarsh platform helps simplify that for our customers, from the capture side all the way to the exporting to our legal support side. So how do we do that? Right, so to meet these requirements, Smarsh built the first and only unified cloud-native platform designed for communications compliance. So how it works is it starts here on the left with capture. So we capture over 100 different channels out of the box, and these are all those different communication tools that I mentioned. And we ingest those intelligent communications into the Smarsh Data Cloud, which is a centralized repository where you can retain, scale, enrich, and analyze the communications that you're bringing into the Smarsh platform. On top of the Smarsh, on top of the Data Cloud, we have three different products. First is the regulatory archive. We call that Enterprise Archive at Smarsh. And this is our compliant, scalable storage solution that has different tiers of storage based on the price point that makes sense for our customers. The second product is our supervision and surveillance product that we call Enterprise Conduct. Enterprise Conduct helps our customers use machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze and run models against the communications as they're ingested into the platform to look for misconduct, right? So if someone in a financial institution is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, we're hoping that our models through Enterprise Conduct find that and raise that up so that a human reviewer within the financial institution can take action on that alert. And then third, we have our e-discovery, which we call Enterprise Discovery inside of Smarsh. And this is built for the most demanding legal workflows. It helps our customers search, analyze, section, package up, and export communications out of the archives when they have a need to. Maybe they're in the middle of a lawsuit and they need to provide all those communications for discovery within the court. So all these things help our customers from capture all the way to the end, using artificial intelligence to analyze the communications as they come in, provide those alerts. So that's how we help our customers. But I'm going to pass it off to Blake, who's going to talk a little bit about what the migration was, what we did, and why we did it.
Thanks, Evan. So to set the stage here, when we started entertaining, moving, and going parallel to a migration inside AWS, it was one of coming from PCF and VMware to native services. So sitting around, I think it was in late 2022 or somewhere in 2023, we started watching what Evan mentioned, the petabytes under management, the data that we hold continuing to grow, the variant nature of this, and there's one thing consistently that was becoming more apparent, that data volume is going to continue. So looking at our foundation, we started evaluating, do we grow with that? So we made a determination to entertain to moving to AWS native services. Already being in AWS, this was an interesting challenge for us because a lot of people go through migrations where you can appreciate going from on-prem to cloud, one provider to another, but it was definitely a unique challenge actually migrating within the same ecosystem. So why? Well, an 8-figure expense reduction was a nice one. That's an easy hit. But it was about putting ourselves in the innovative position to create the opportunity of actually growing that scale of data. 70 petabytes under management eventually becomes 100, which becomes 1,000. It's important for us to have the scale and innovation that we have to actually grow with our customers. So we made the decision. Terrifyingly, we made the decision, might I add. But Graviton next-gen security services and that support to scale to that exabyte volume was really important for us to actually do it. So creating the momentum for this discussion was broken down to, as you can see on the screen, the analysis and the feasibility. We had to really understand what it took from a technical and non-technical perspective. And in reality, do this under 9 months. So, like with all large-scale migrations, we're all familiar with the terms retire, retain, rehost, relocate. They're all pretty common standard things. But the pitfalls of a scale at this size is making the wrong choice at the wrong time. You can plan and plan and plan and write things down, but it's really important to understand what you're getting into. So having 400 unique deployments of Postgres, Redis, Kafka, and Mongo, it really resonated with us to understand what we were going to do in each corner of this, because we were on largely unmanaged deployments. AWS's ecosystem is extremely apparent of the benefits, but it came down to 3 sets of categories: cost, high availability, and quality. So as you can see here, it's a representation of the variant discussions we've had to determine what to do with each one of our technologies. So where did we start? Validation is incredibly important here. We had to realize some confidence of actually migrating in the same ecosystem. So we had to kind of look at something not mission critical, but important enough to tell us and give us the understanding that we actually could do it in a time that was reasonable. So we started with approximately 142 deployments of Postgres. These were unmanaged, not from a deployment perspective with RDS, but simply put our own in-house grown systems. So it came for us to, we had to kind of look at the application lifecycle because that was where the work was going to be. It came down to 4 sets of categories: application readiness, app hardening, and migration readiness, and the actual migration. These were all really important for us to understand, but a discussion that we had really early on was, do we upgrade our technology to support our target state in place on PCF and Cloud Foundry? And a lot of the essences the answer was yes. But going through this cycle, it's quite daunting to realize as you start doing this discovery, we did in fact migrate the 142 and it was successful, and that gave us the confidence to start tackling the 1,569 various container deployments in our ecosystem. So along this journey, the challenge was apparent to us that we had to be careful every step of the way. Doing this in 9 months was, frankly, terrifying at this scale. We had to lean into something that really resonates with scaling and resiliency from an observability platform rethink. And we're all familiar with the reactionary nature of observability, the on-calls. I'm sure everyone's been woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning for something. But the reality was we had to support this migration at the same time of handling that 70 petabytes under management and not upset our customers as well. So we had to really start kind of thinking, well, what tools does AWS have that we can really pivot on? Like I always like to say is observability platforms are the determination of when to innovate and change versus pivoting completely in a different direction. So we looked at technologies like Amazon Managed Prometheus, OpenTelemetry, all the way through to Kata and Carpenter. And it really showed us that the data that we were getting out of this process and rethinking how we did it in the early stages of the program gave us more and more momentum as we continued through the migration.
So Blake talked about creating the observability on the past slide, and then we did the migration away from, we were on VMware Tanzu and moved over to Amazon EKS. So the technology migration, then the creation of the observability were the first two steps in setting up our product teams to be able to make the right decisions for our customers. The next step was reorganizing the platform engineering team, right? So we decided to organize the team into three groups: Forge, Tooling, and Insights. Inside of each of these teams, you have multiple development organizations, development squads that have technical product managers, engineering leaders, developers, and they have different responsibilities. Forge is our champions of our core infrastructure, focused on stability, managing our runtime environments, application orchestration, and the like. Tooling is really about that developer experience, right? Through automation, release pipelines, API gateway management, as well as that developer experience of creating the proper IDE, creating the right testing suites for our engineering teams to use. And then Insights manages the products that Blake was talking about on the previous slide. So how do we create observability? How do we enable our product teams that are on top of our platform to have insight into that data? The Insights team manages those and makes that data available to the product teams. So aligning the teams this way, empowering them with the data, and giving them the autonomy to develop their roadmaps enabled that natural result, which is moving fast. In addition to reorganizing the team, giving them access to the data, and changing the technology, we also needed to change the product model, right? So what we did is two things, and I'm going to talk about the first one. Blake will talk about the second one. The first one was, how do we bridge the gap between technical complexities and strategic product direction? So how do we link what's happening in platform engineering to what our customers expect, right? So to do that, we implemented and we introduced a role within the organization of technical product management, which helps to make sure that we're equipped with the right information to make informed choices about what technologies we're going to use that work for our customers at the right price point, right, for our product set. And the second was dual track agile.
So with dual track agile and the role of the technical product manager, it became very apparent that we needed obsession with how things were built, not just what was built. That created, in essence, iterative value statement as we went through this migration. We saw with the Postgres example a high degree of confidence that we actually could make the move. But as we iterated through this process and discovered what we wanted to do from a long-standing point of view going forward into 25, 26, was the nature of iterative development through delivery and discovery is that it's one thing to actually develop something that no one will use, but it's a completely different thing to develop something in a fast-tracked environment that delivers value right out the gate. It might not be perfect, but it delivers value. So the role of the technical product manager for us was pivotal to actually realizing this inside the organization. Now, at the end of the day, why does this matter to our end users? I have two cases up on the screen which I'll talk about, but it goes back to, for me, that data under management. That's going to continue to grow. No downtime, fast, accessible, so they could be able to do their jobs. Ultimately, that's the point, right? So, as we went through this process and completed our migration inside the ecosystem, we started noticing more things out of our observability platform rethink, and they're kind of broken into two cases. The first case being, while we definitely saw this before, not at the scale that we were watching kind of starting to occur, scaling up 3 terabytes of RAM and 2,000 CPU for 15 minutes was, frankly, not possible for us. So during some of our peak load events, we were watching some of the graphs and sitting around, more often than not, just graph staring. It's something I like to do. But we watched this demand of this workload go on the tens of millions of messages and objects come into our system, and our system responded, and then scaled back down. What was the result? The customer saw no degradations. They saw their data come through quickly. Ultimately, a positive experience. And it wasn't something that we ended up having to deal with doing a manual scaling event to handle that workload. Now, case 2 was a different one, a little bit interesting for us, but as we started developing a lot more components inside our observability platform, we started noticing more correlation to change. Now, our ingestion rate is something we continue to talk about, how many docs per second, how fast is it going, what are our lag rates. I'm sure we can all appreciate Kafka in some degree. But we were sitting on the phone. I often spend a lot of time on the phone, and we're demonstrating, walking through some tools. And as we were watching these things and going through our next iterative development through that discovery and delivery process, we actually noticed ingestion rates starting to drop. Never seen that before. And it was due to a config update. It was a rolling update to some of our containers. It gave us a chance to not only rectify it in moments, but it was another value statement that was realized to us in the form of, rather than spinning up 15 sets of people and multiple teams to understand why this has now gone down and the customers ringing us going, why am I starting to slow down? Why aren't you keeping up? It was nothing. It was 2 people on a phone. So those 2 cases really gave to us and shown to us that what we were doing was the right thing. We could support more. And the result ultimately being no downtime and no slowdowns for the end user, which is really what matters. So where to next? We've all watched the presentations. I, for one, am quite excited about where AI is heading. And going back to what I said earlier, the innovative nature of what we determined how to grow with our data, it really was important for us to be able to be put in the best possible position to integrate with partners, new technology, the new announcements. I'm sure a lot of our engineers, some in the audience, are excited to go back to the office and start rolling out some new tech. But we started exploring a lot of these things, like Amazon EMR, OpenSearch, S3 Outposts, and the list goes on.
And that's why we're here, right? This week at reInvent, we have more than 30 engineers here that are talking to AWS product teams, attending sessions, increasing their certification levels, with the goal of understanding how to bring these patterns and new services back to Smarsh to better serve our customers. So we're super excited about the future. We're hiring engineers all over the world, so please check out our careers page. If you're interested, you want to learn more. Thank you all so much. Again, we're at booth 318. Thank you.